Hello, I want to talk to you about chapter 5 and 6, but I'm going to talk to you about that from a different perspective of what you're going to read in the textbook. Be sure you read what the textbook says about um, socio cognitive development in infants and some physical and cognitive stuff with middle and early childhood, early and middle childhood. That's all good stuff. But what I want you to be concerned with right now is some theoretical background about this. And I promise I'll get myself situated here. I want to begin by talking about development as an active or reactive process. John Locke, a theorist who claimed that a child's mind is a blank slate. Learning is nurture. This is strictly a nurture theory, as you can see. Jean-Jacques Rousseau had a different view. Now, this is going to be hard for you to put together. This is some pretty serious analytical thinking. So, John Locke, young mind is a blank slate, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, I'll just call him Rousseau and Locke. Rousseau says that young minds are inherently good, but are corrupted by society. So these are called active and reactive theories. Active more in the realm of Locke and reactive more in the realm of Rousseau. Both of these are very simplistic views, very simplistic theories. They don't account for things like internal motivations. And internal motivations can help influence development. They can help direct development. The bottom line is the thought is that children cannot develop properly in an isolated environment. Now, if you probably aren't familiar with this person, Lev Vygotsky, also a theorist by the name of Jean Piaget. You'll be reading about these characters. Vygotsky was a big proponent of nurture. A child learns more quickly when they're being taught through a scaffolding system. I'll let you worry about that, and we'll worry about it together later. So, and Piaget was, socio-emotional input, so on and so forth, to an extent, minus any extra help. They're still going to develop. So you could place those two fellows, Piaget and Vygotsky, in the same universe. Do children just naturally develop, or are they nurtured and develop quickly, so on and so forth? So that's what we're going to be talking about for a few minutes. Let's start with what's known as the mechanistic view. This is John Locke. We talked about active reactive just a moment ago, and we talked about nurture. John Locke's view is a mechanistic view. That view is that people are like machines. They react to environmental input. What is that called? It's called nurture. And they have predictable responses to stimuli. What does that eliminate? It almost tells you that your personality or any internal influences don't matter. So keep these things in mind. Identity does. Identity contains factors that make people behave as they do. For example, advertising, stress, peer influence. In our day and time, from the 50s, advertising on TV, the type of programs, stuff like that. Stuff that absolutely has a bearing on the way people develop. Children is what we're basically talking about. That's the mechanistic view. Rousseau's view is an organistic review. People are active organisms, according to Rousseau. that this sets development into motion, this organistic thing. Your developmental process is an initiated process by you, not a reaction to what's going on around you. So there's more internal here in Rousseau's thinking than Locke. Locke is more external. Change is internal, not external, is even stated in his theory. Environmental factors can affect development, but don't cause it. So this is a more nurture view. You should have picked up on that already. Rousseau gives you the allowance for choosing. You choose what activities, what situations you want to participate in, and also with whom. So think about that a minute. If I'm making these choices related to those things, then am I not going to be affected by what's around me? Again, nurture, more nurture than nature. John Locke, more nature than nurture. And then there's another aspect to all this. Continuous and continuous and discontinuous. Continuous development. That's a mechanistic view. That's a John Locke view. Gradual and incremental gains. Climbing a hill, in other words. This is the vertical part of development. Remember, we talked about the horizontal line, which is change, and the vertical aspect, which is gaining, which is like going from crawling to walking or whatever the case is. Is that a change? Absolutely. But are you also reaching a milestone? Absolutely, because you're learning how to walk, overcoming crawling. You, according to his theory, also you can be measured in terms of your development. It's predictable, quantitatively predictable. Quantitative change, that means that change in the number or amount of your development, weight, height, the size of your vocabulary. I know I'm looking around a lot, but when I think I do. As opposed to Rousseau's view that it's discontinuous, development. The organistic view, mechanistic, gradual, incremental. The organistic view, change in kind and structure or organization. In other words, change from nonverbal to verbal communication, as an example. New information, not anticipated, very nurtured in its nature. Hope that doesn't confuse you. Development, in other words, occurs in stages. So the mechanistic view is a continuous, like a flowing river. The discontinuous or organistic view is stage development. And which do you suppose is the more popular design? And now the answer to that is discontinuous. Discontinuous is the organistic view. Each stage builds on a previous stage. Very well explained in Jean Piaget's theory. Something that you're going to become acquainted with in the textbook. I don't really know that I'll have time to run over it with you in the lecture, but I'll try. So, with that in mind, with all of that in mind, discontinuous, continuous, John Locke's mechanistic view, Rousseau's organistic view, i.e. stage development, then we can look at theoretical perspectives. And the theoretical perspectives are broken down into 5 perspectives. Psychoanalytic, that's Freudian psychology. That's psychosexual theory. Again, you'll become acquainted with these as you read. The psychosocial theory, which is very popular, Erik Erikson's theory, broken down into 8 stages, I believe it is, starting with infancy. Learning perspective, that would be Pavlov, Skinner, Ivan Pavlov, B.F. Skinner, John B. Watson. That's known as behaviorism. Traditional learning, That's what they're talking about. Environment controls behavior. And then Albert Bandura, social learning theory. Social learning theory based on you observing and imitating others, which is not out of the realm. We all do that. The cognitive theory, that's Jean Piaget, who I talked about a moment ago. Cognitive stage development, qualitative changes in thought that occur between infancy and adolescence. Children are imitators. They're little sponges. They're little computers. And then Vygotsky, who delved into Piaget's theory, the socio-cultural theory, social interaction, teaching. So you will develop faster in some aspect of development if there's someone to teach you things about it. Bronfenbrenner's bioecological theory. Urie Bronfenbrenner's theory is very, very different from all the others. It's almost a combination in a way, but it's more about interaction. The bioecological part of it, biological and then the what's around you theory. There are 5 interlocking contextual aspects to his theory. They're called systems. And then the evolutionary socio-biological aspect or perspective. John Bowlby's attachment theory. Mary Ainsworth and John Bowlby did a lot of work in that area where you deal with children forming a behavioral response to input from their caregiver, particularly their mom. Where are their emotional needs, and secondarily, are their physical needs being met? And if not, then what kind of a relationship do they form with their caregiver? Is it secure or insecure? Again, you would see, and we'll see in your text, how that plays out. So I'll leave you with that. That opens the door for chapters 5 and 6. Read these accordingly and make the cognitive comparisons to what you're reading, and we'll be talking about it in a different context later, maybe later this week, but nonetheless later. Okay, so enjoy.